Hello, welcome back to Mark the Voice. I'm Mark. I'm a voiceover artist and a voice actor. In this short series of videos, I'm going to demonstrate how to create a home-based voiceover studio or sound booth. And I'm going to do that by means of converting this old outbuilding, which used to be the pig pen at my cottage in Cheshire, England. And this is part 2 in the series. Part 1 was the introduction. And in this video, I'm going to scope out the project and have a look at some of the finer detail of my master plan for converting this piggery into a soundproof, sound-treated sound booth. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take you inside the booth and have a look at some of the issues that we might come across when we try and soundproof this building. So now here we are inside the pig pen, and you can see it's quite a nice space for a sound booth. It's got a diagonally sloping roof. The walls are made out of bricks, and that's good because they're very solid and they will absorb a lot of the sound from outside. Now, I've done a sound booth before, and when you're designing a sound booth, you need to treat sound as your enemy. When I'm talking about sound in this context, I mean sound from the outside world getting in and invading your sound booth. And even now, as I'm stood here, I can hear cars and birds and dogs and cows and horses outside. And all that sound, of course, will be picked up by a high quality voiceover microphone. So I need to find ways of stopping or at least mitigating that sound from getting inside the booth. Now, I hope you can see this. My booth is effectively that shape. What I'm going to do is the first thing is I'm going to look at all the different things which might, in terms of sound, invade this space. And I'm going to look at that from the outside and plug up any gaps from the outside. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stand here, I'm going to share that with you now. I'm going to look at all the different areas inside this booth and explore and investigate areas where sound might be getting in. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to soundproof, or sound as much as possible soundproof, the inside of this space. And once I've done that, which is basically the whole of the inside of this space, inside this piggery, I'm then going to construct and build a freestanding sound booth, which is completely isolated and disconnected from this outside structure within the booth. And that sound booth is going to sit on a rubberized mat. Now, the first thing I've noticed when I've come in here is that the floor is not perfectly level. And I'm going to build this internal sound booth with a wooden stud frame. And it's important that it makes perfect contact with the floor, because any dips or any grooves will allow sound through. So I'm going to have, the first thing we're going to have to do is use some self-leveling compound on the floor here. Now this wood, you might think that's relatively soundproof, but it isn't. It really effectively is just slates, battens, and then some membrane. That's not going to stop sound from getting in. So I'm going to have to treat in between these joists with some sound treatment. And all the way along here, along this edge, I can see light through. The fact that there's ivy in here demonstrates that there's gaps where noise could come through. So I'm going to have to spray expanding foam all the way along there. And the same is true all the way up here. Wherever the roof meets the joists or the brickworks, there's gaps. So I'll be getting several tins or tubes of that expanding foam and squirting it in. And I can see lots of bricks there. You see, the bricks, the shape of the bricks is like a step. And the joists come along, and of course there's a gap there. It never meets, so that's going to have expanding foam squirted in. And then I will treat these walls with some wool or rock wool insulation, and that will just stop any sound vibration from coming in. If you imagine this ceiling here is like the skin of a drum, and any sound that goes over or comes towards it will cause that to vibrate. Particularly helicopters, they have that thudding, vibrating, resonating sound, and that would cause that to vibrate. So I need to isolate the inside of my booth from that. So in no way will my freestanding booth, which is constructed inside this piggery here, in no way will that make any contact with this wood or these bricks. And the floor, whilst it will have to sit on the floor, it's going to sit on a rubberized mat. I'm thinking of those rubberized mats you can get from Halfords or car shops that you lie on. And if I get 2 of those and I construct it using timber, like this timber which I've got here, I'll create a stud frame and that will sit flat and perfectly. Now, so the inside of this is going to be treated and soundproofed. Then I'm going to build my structure, which will be a stud frame. The outside of the stud frame will have plasterboard on it. The gaps within the stud frame will be treated with rock wool, and then the inside will also have plasterboard. But that will leave a weak spot because along the front here, clearly, I'm going to have a door to the outside world. Now what I'm thinking of is buying a second-hand back door which is all glass. I want glass because when I'm in here doing some work or some editing, not recording, I'll cover the glass up when I'm recording because it's quite reflective, but when I'm in here doing some editing, I want to be able to see the garden beyond. I don't want to be sat in the dark all the time. But those back doors, believe it or not, whilst you might think they're quite soundproof, they're not soundproof. They're actually going to let some sound through. So what I'll probably do is I'll probably build a double frame at this end and have 2 of those doors, one opening out and one opening in. It'll be like an airlock. And in between that frame, again, I'll treat that with rock wool and insulation. And hopefully, I mean, perfection is the enemy of good. I don't think in this situation, you're never going to stop all noise coming in to a space. But hopefully, with that several different layers of sound insulation against the outside world, against the invading sound, if I can plug all the gaps and then I can make this space as soundproof as possible, when I'm inside it, it will be quiet. Then I'll have to come back to you and talk to you about treating the inside of it, about treating it against things like bass effect and resonance and reflected sound, and you get an accumulation of impact by that. So we'll have to treat the inside of that. Now I know a guy called Rob B, who's a sound engineer in Manchester, and I might even recruit his services to help me do that when I get to that stage. So there we are. That's my master plan for treating and soundproofing this building into a soundbooth, a voiceover studio. Please do subscribe if you want to know what's next and if you want to see how it progresses. And what I will be doing next is some of the work. I'll be constructing the frame. I'll probably construct it out there in the garden and then bring it in piece by piece. I'll also be leveling the floor, as I've already said, and I'll be squirting expanding foam in all the gaps. I'll be filling these gaps in between these joists with insulation, possibly put a thin layer of ply or plasterboard across that, and then there'll be a gap between that and my actual booth itself. Hope that's been interesting. Please don't forget to subscribe and hit the notifications bell, and I'll see you soon for part 3.